My name is Rachel Monroe, and the day my husband died was the same day I realized just how alone I truly was. It was a Monday morning in January, the kind of cold that feels like it's trying to crawl under your skin. I hadn't changed out of the jeans I'd worn to the hospital 2 nights before. My overnight bag still sat in the passenger seat, untouched since Ethan collapsed. I had left St. Joseph's Hospital less than 12 hours earlier, his death certificate folded between wilted roses from his coworkers. I pulled into the driveway, numb. The house was supposed to be silent now, grief-filled, yes but still mine. Familiar, safe. Instead, I walked up to the front door, slid my key into the lock, and nothing happened. It jammed. I tried again. Still nothing. Confused, I reached for the spare, tucked under the loose porch stone. That one didn't work either. My heart pounded. I looked at the windows. The white linen curtains I had sewn myself were gone, replaced with thick velvet panels, floral, gaudy, unfamiliar. Something was wrong. I stepped back and peered through the narrow slit between curtain and window frame. Inside, boxes were stacked in every corner of the living room. My reading chair had a pink velvet pillow on it. My wedding china teacups Ethan and I had saved 3 years to afford those were on the table. And there she was, Diana. My mother-in-law, wearing a navy cardigan and sipping tea from my cup. Across from her, folding throw blankets into a basket, was Jocelyn, Ethan's sister. They were laughing. They had moved in. I knocked on the door, hard. No response. I knocked again. Finally, Diana opened the door with a smile that felt carved from ice. "Rachel," she said coolly, arms folded. "Didn't expect you so soon." "What's going on? Why can't I open the door?" I asked, voice trembling. "Because, dear," she said, tilting her head slightly, "you don't live here anymore." And just like that, the world shifted. My grief turned to something colder, something sharp, something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. I stood frozen on the porch, unable to speak. My hand was still on the doorframe, fingertips numb from the cold and from shock. I looked past Diana into the house, my house, and everything looked wrong. It wasn't just the curtains or the pillow or the missing photo frames. It was the feeling, the energy. It felt like I'd already been erased. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "Ethan and I lived here together. We built this life." Diana didn't flinch. "Ethan paid for this house. My son, not you." My voice cracked. "I refinanced the mortgage when his business failed. I made the payments." She waved a hand like she was swatting away a fly. "Please, you played house while he worked. No prenup, no children, no legal claim. The house goes back to his family now. It's only right." Behind her, Jocelyn emerged holding 2 of my serving plates. "You left the side door unlocked when you rushed to the hospital," she said with a smirk. "We figured you wouldn't mind." It was like a scene from a dream gone wrong, a parody of grief. My mind couldn't keep up. I laughed, not from humor but disbelief, the kind of laugh that slips out when your reality breaks in 2. "What's funny?" Diana asked, brows tightening. I steadied myself. "You're pouring tea in a house you think belongs to you, but you have no idea what you've just stepped into." And for the first time, her perfect composure slipped, just a little, a twitch in the jaw, a shadow in her eye. I turned around and walked to my car. My keys were useless now, but I had something else. Something she didn't know existed. 2 years ago, almost to the day, I sat on this same porch with Ethan. His head was in his hands. The startup he'd built from scratch just collapsed. He was panicked, devastated. "They might take the house, Rachel," he had said. That night, while he slept, I drove to the credit union and refinanced the mortgage. Quietly. In my name, with money I had saved for a decade since leaving my job in interior design. I took a freelance gig to cover the payments. I never told him, never told anyone. I just kept the house running. I painted the hallway. I made the grocery lists. I stretched every dollar. I protected the home we built silently. Diana never knew. She hated the South anyway. Visited only on holidays. She called Savannah soft. Said Ethan was meant for more than jazz and floral wallpaper. But Ethan used to whisper in bed, "She doesn't understand peace." Now she sat in my living room pretending to mourn, sipping from a cup she didn't earn, in a house she thought was unguarded. But I hadn't left it unguarded. I had just never expected the war would begin before his body was even cold. People like Diana believe strength comes from volume-raised voices, slam doors, power moves. But I've learned something different. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is stay quiet and act. 2 years ago, Ethan's company folded in a week. One moment, he was preparing a pitch for a major investor. The next, the bank had frozen his accounts and the bills started piling up. He stopped eating. He couldn't sleep. And the guilt, oh, the guilt. It hollowed him. I remember sitting on the edge of our porch with him, watching him crumble. He kept saying the same thing over and over, "I failed you." But he hadn't. Not really. He just hit a wall life didn't train him to climb over. So I stepped in. Without telling him, I went to the credit union the next morning. I used my design savings money I'd quietly built over 10 years to refinance the mortgage. I didn't do it for thanks. I didn't do it for power. I did it because I loved him and I didn't want him to carry everything alone. The mortgage went under my name. I picked up extra freelance projects, late nights redesigning kitchens I'd never step into, weekends calculating every penny. I never said a word. Ethan didn't ask where the mortgage receipts were going. He didn't want to know. I wasn't trying to be noble. I was trying to survive, to keep us afloat. I kept the lights on, kept the repairs going, clipped coupons, fixed leaky faucets, and I made it work, quietly, invisibly. Diana, of course, never knew. She would have twisted it into a story about how her son couldn't provide, how I emasculated him, how I took control. That's why I never told her. I didn't need her judgment. I didn't need her approval. But now, standing on the sidewalk watching her redecorate my living room with smug entitlement, I felt something shift. For the first time in years, I regretted staying silent. I regretted not documenting more, not protecting myself as much as I protected Ethan. And yet somewhere in that mountain of unpaid emotional labor I had kept one thing sacred. Proof. Not just the refinance. Something else. Something that Ethan left behind. Something I didn't even know existed yet. But I would find it. Because this time, I wasn't just fighting for my home. I was fighting for the truth. And I wasn't going to lose. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of a modal bed that smelled like bleach and cheap air freshener, staring at the wall like it might speak first. There were no clothes in my bag, just hospital paperwork, a paperback novel I never opened, and Ethan's phone charger. My fingers clutched the last voicemail he ever left me, still saved in my phone. "I'm sorry I scared you earlier," he had said. "I'll be okay. I promise." But he wasn't. And now I wasn't either. I played the message 3 times before I turned my phone off. It felt like cutting off the last signal from a world I wasn't welcome in anymore. The grief came in waves, but they were quiet. No tears, just a gnawing pressure behind my eyes and a weight in my chest that made it hard to breathe. And then, somewhere around dawn, a thought pushed through the fog. I picked up the phone and called the funeral home. "Good morning," a soft voice answered, "St. Matthew's Memorial. This is Margaret." "Yes," I said, surprised at the steadiness in my own voice. "This is Rachel Monroe. I need to update the guest list for Ethan Monroe's service." "Of course, Mrs. Monroe. What changes would you like to make?" I didn't hesitate. "Please remove Diana Monroe and Jocelyn Monroe." A long pause. "Understood." I hung up before she could ask why. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was the first real boundary I'd drawn in over a decade. A decade of compromise, of patience, of swallowing disrespect for the sake of peace. But this wasn't about peace anymore. Not when my grief was being devoured by entitlement. This was about drawing a line. And I had just drawn it. By Tuesday afternoon, the motel room felt like a prison made of peeling wallpaper and silence. I hadn't eaten, hadn't showered, but I knew I couldn't stay still. I needed answers. I needed proof. I parked my car a block away from the house and walked along the side hedge, the one that bordered the backyard. The air was thick with Savannah's winters and damp, soft and gray, just like my mood. The side door off the laundry room had always had a faulty latch. Ethan promised he'd fix it, but never did. I had learned long ago how to ease it open without a sound. Inside, the scent hit me first. Lavender, Diana's favorite. I hated it. I stepped cautiously through the laundry room and down the hallway. My photos were gone. The one of Ethan and me hiking in Colorado, replaced by a generic mountain landscape. The hallway table I restored myself, covered in crystal figurines Diana must have brought in. I didn't stop. I didn't allow myself to feel it, not yet. Instead, I went straight to Ethan's office. Tucked behind the guest room, it was a small, windowless room filled with wires, notebooks, and the subtle trace of his cologne. Diana always called it the digital junkyard. That's how I knew she wouldn't touch it. And she hadn't. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, organized in the chaotic way only he could understand. USBs labeled in thick black marker. Receipts paper-clipped by date. Business cards from people I'd never met. I opened drawers, pulled files, checked folders. I didn't know what I was looking for, just something that connected us, something that could prove this house wasn't hers. Then I saw it. A slim black folder tucked between two instruction manuals, across the top in Ethan's handwriting. Posnup, do not discard. My breath caught. We had never signed a prenup. When we married, we were broke and idealistic. Ethan used to say, we don't need paperwork, we have trust. But a postnup. I opened it. 3 printed pages. Legal letterhead. Dated 2 weeks after our second anniversary. I scanned until I found it. In the event of the husband's death, all jointly owned assets, including real estate, are to be transferred wholly to Rachel Monroe, unless otherwise specified in the last will and testament. There was no will, but it was binding. At the back was a folded sheet of notebook paper, 4 lines in Ethan's unmistakable handwriting. If you're reading this, something awful has happened. If Mom tries anything, show this to your lawyer. You know how she is. Keep this safe, Rach. I clutched the paper to my chest. Ethan had known. He hadn't just trusted me, he'd protected me. Even in silence, he had given me the tools to fight back. Wednesday afternoon came cloaked in a dull, lifeless gray, the kind of sky that looks like it's been holding its breath. I had just returned from meeting Angela Flores, my old college roommate turned real estate attorney. I hadn't seen her in over a decade, but the moment I walked into her office, she hugged me like no time had passed. She didn't ask how I was. She just looked at me and said, "We're going to fix this." Her confidence steadied me in a way I hadn't felt since the funeral home call. I handed over the postnup and Ethan's note, and she flipped through it like a surgeon studying scans. "We have more than enough," she said. Back at the motel, I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of soup when I heard it. 3 knocks at the door, sharp, measured, confident. I peeked through the curtain. Diana. Wearing a black coat like she was auditioning for a daytime soap. Beside her stood a man in a gray suit, clipboard in hand, ring on his finger. Lawyer. I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped outside with my coat zipped to the neck, folder in hand, and met them in the parking lot. The wind whipped Diana's scarf sideways. "Rachel," she said with a tight smile. "This is Mr. Langley, our family attorney. We're here to discuss next steps regarding the house." "Next steps," I repeated. My voice was calm, too calm. Mr. Langley cleared his throat. "Since Ethan passed without a will, his assets, including the home, may be subject to division among next of kin." "I'm his wife," I said. "Yes, of course," the lawyer nodded, clearly uneasy. "But without a testamentary directive, probate law." So glad you're both here," I cut in, lifting the black folder. "Saves me a trip." Diana's eyes narrowed as I continued. "This is a notarized postnuptial agreement, signed 3 years ago. 2 witnesses. Legal letterhead. It transfers all shared assets to me in the event of Ethan's death." Silence. Mr. Langley blinked. "May I see?" "No," I said, stepping back. "You'll get a copy through official channels. My attorney already has it." Diana's mouth twitched. "You're bluffing." I tilted my head. "If I am, you should feel confident walking back to your car. If I'm not, well, then you've broken the law. Trespassing, unlawful entry, tampering with someone else's property." The lawyer subtly stepped away from her. Diana's voice dropped an octave. "You don't get to win this time. You were never part of our family. You stole my son." I didn't flinch. "He wasn't a trophy," I replied. "He was a man. And I didn't steal him. You pushed him away the moment he stopped living by your rules." I turned, walked back to my room, and closed the door behind me. From the window, I watched Diana stand frozen for a beat, then spin around and storm off like a queen denied her crown. They didn't knock again. Thursday morning arrived wrapped in tension. The motel room was still and stale, thick with the scent of instant coffee and old grief. I was sitting at the fold-out table, sorting through funeral arrangements again, choir options, seating plans, photos for the memorial slideshow, when I noticed the envelope. It had been slid under the door. No stamp, no return address. Just my name printed on the front, Rachel Monroe. I picked it up with a sense of dread crawling up my spine. Inside was a crisp document from the Camden County Probate Court. I unfolded the pages slowly. It was a formal petition filed by Diana Monroe, challenging the validity of the postnuptial agreement. She alleged I had coerced Ethan, taken advantage of him during a time of mental and emotional distress, and manipulated him into signing over his assets. I stopped reading. My hands trembled, but not from fear. Not this time. She was trying to rewrite the story. To paint me as the villain. To erase every moment of devotion, every sacrifice I had made while she breezed in and out of our lives, in tailored coats and judgmental silence. But she had underestimated me. Again. I wasn't just the grieving widow anymore. I was a woman with documentation, with witnesses, with counsel, and with years of receipts, proof of payment, quiet actions that held our life together while Ethan recovered. Angela had already filed a notice of representation and prepared a response. She had warned me Diana might make a move like this. What Diana didn't know was that we had already gathered Ethan's medical records, financial recovery statements, therapist notes, everything to prove he was of sound mind when he signed that postnup. She could throw mud, but the evidence was clean. I sat back in my chair and let out a slow, deliberate breath. I didn't want war. But I wasn't walking away. Not from my name. Not from my truth. Not from the home I kept standing when no one else showed up. She could challenge the paperwork all she wanted. I had something stronger. Reality. And I was done letting her rewrite it. By the time Friday morning rolled in, the motel room had absorbed my grief like smoke in old fabric. I hadn't cried. I hadn't screamed. I had simply endured, quietly. That morning I stood in front of the mirror, put on a black blouse, tied my hair back, and slipped Ethan's note into my purse. The ink had faded slightly at the edges from how many times I had unfolded it, but the words were still sharp, still his. I attended the memorial service with calm poise, no tears in front of strangers. No dramatic exits, just a quiet dignity that came from knowing he had trusted me, truly trusted me to carry the truth forward. Diana didn't attend. Neither did Jocelyn. They weren't on the list. They weren't part of the goodbye. A week later, I returned to the house. This time, legally, with court-certified documents and a locksmith of my own. The door opened easily. The lavender air fresheners were gone, so were the velvet curtains, the boxes, the crystal trinkets. I walked through the house slowly, running my fingers along the walls I had painted, the floorboards I had scrubbed, the kitchen drawers I had organized for years. Not for recognition, not for control. For love. I took Ethan's letter and placed it in a frame above the fireplace. 4 lines of messy ink, a reminder that even in his silence he had protected me. He had known. And now I knew something too, something I had forgotten during years of shrinking myself to keep the peace. My strength wasn't in how quietly I endured. It was in how I chose to rise. Not out of vengeance, but out of truth. Out of love. Out of finally choosing myself. Sometimes the quietest strength is the most powerful. Rachel didn't fight with fury. She fought with facts, with calm resolve, with years of unspoken sacrifice finally given a voice. Her story is a reminder that we are allowed to set boundaries, we are allowed to protect what we've built, and we are allowed to reclaim our place even when others try to erase us. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Because sometimes healing begins when we stop apologizing for taking up space and start standing in our truth.
The wooden bench beneath me felt harder with every passing minute. My hands gripped it until